We're covering a bigger chunk of the text than we normally do, and I know that as we were going through, when we jumped into James and we're going through chapter 1, it just seemed to progressively get slower and slower, and so sorry about that, but not really. But as we get into chapter 2, we're looking at a bigger text. It's going to speed up a little bit. I think the reason why it kind of fleshed out that way is I think James chapter 1, especially in last week's word in verses 26 and 27, it kind of lays out the thesis or the summary of all of James. And so we had to just I thought it was appropriate, just spend 1 week just looking at those 2 verses as just kind of an introduction, a reintroduction, I guess, into James. And so we're kind of expositing and expounding on verses 26 and 27. Okay, that's kind of what we're doing now. And so we're looking at a bigger chunk of the text. So we're looking at chapter 2, verses 1 to 13. And before we read it, we'll read it in chunks. I'm just going to lay out for you very simply the flow or kind of the outline for today. Okay, and it's super duper simple. Okay, first, it's really 3 questions. How do we apply the gospel? 2, what is the gospel? And 3, why do we need the gospel? And so I realized that if you're used to being here, that's kind of in reverse order of kind of Pastor Howard's formulaic sermons. I know we kind of start like, why do we need the gospel? And we end with application, but we're going with the flow of James, and that's how he kind of lays it out. So go to verse 1. My brothers, show no partiality as you hold the faith in our Lord Jesus Christ, the Lord of glory. For if a man wearing a gold ring and fine clothing comes into your assembly, and a poor man in shabby clothing also comes in, and if you pay attention to the one who wears the fine clothing and say, you sit here in a good place, while you say to the poor man, you stand over there, or sit down at my feet, have you not then made distinctions among yourselves and become judges with evil thoughts? Stop there. So again, I know we don't normally start with application, but we kind of have to, because James here starts in chapter 2 just kind of guns blazing. You know what I'm saying? Like, he just comes out direct. And maybe for some of us, it's a little bit too direct if we're going to be honest with it, right? Verse 1, he just starts, look, my brothers, who's he talking about? Christians, saints, people saved by the grace of the Lord Jesus Christ. Anytime a New Testament author starts with brothers, he's not talking about, hey, yo, what's up, brother? Just kind of brother in general, but brothers, sisters, family of God. He's talking to the church. And then he just says straight out, show no partiality as you hold the faith in our Lord Jesus Christ. That is the application. Show no partiality as you hold the faith in our Lord Jesus Christ. And it's so simple and it's straightforward. It's almost as if we don't have to talk about it and we could just move on, but we're not going to. We will talk about it. Show no partiality, that's just kind of another way of saying don't show favoritism. And favoritism is a little bit of an easy way to look at it because we all have favorites, especially if you serve in the education department. As much as we don't like to admit it, we all do. In kids ministry and youth ministry, we all have our favorites. There might be a kind of a cute kid, and that's why he's our favorite. Or there's a kid that's really not cute, and that's why he's our favorite. And there's a kid who reads his Bible. He's the only one in my Bible study that reads the Bible, and therefore he's my favorite. But that's not really the kind of weight of the text that we're feeling. If I said don't show favoritism, yes, you might say, okay, that's kind of easy. I'm not going to really take that seriously. But what if I pushed it a little further and I said instead of favoritism, instead of partiality, I said discrimination? What if I used the word racism or classism or prejudice? And I think that changes a lot for us today because those words are really ugly, especially in our political climate, especially a lot of the things happening in this country. Those are really, really ugly words. And if you are labeled as someone who is racist, someone who is prejudiced, someone who is classist, then you are some of the worst people in the world, according to our culture today. And that's the kind of force or the kind of weight that we have to have from this text. And so James is saying, don't show partiality. Don't treat someone well because they're wearing a gold ring and fine clothing. gold ring and fine clothing, and then mistreat someone because they're wearing shabby clothes. And so that's what it is. That's the application. And so let me unpack that a little bit. I think about church a lot, as I should. I'm your pastor. But when I say that I think about church, sometimes it's not always like hardcore theology. It's like these crazy, intricate theological things that I'm thinking about. Sometimes I just think random things. Sometimes I think, what if in our church service today, just what if, by chance, what if Kobe Bryant came to our service today? What if? You know what I'm saying? Like, there's no reason in the world why he would, right? But what if? Just what if? Like, let's think about that, right? Kobe Bryant walks in the door and everyone's just kind of freaking out. It's Kobe Bryant, and everyone's Instagramming it and stuff like that. No one's focused on Jesus. And everyone's like, taking pictures of Kobe Bryant, right? And then everyone's freaking out. But me, as your kind of fearless leader, I go to him like I'm all cool, right? Like I've met him before. And realistically, I'm probably going to be like, Mr. Bryant, are you lost? Yeah, the 91's over there. What are you doing here? And he's like, yeah, I came to worship Jesus. I'm like, yeah, chill, come on, I'm being all cool. But inside I'm freaking out, and so I'm trying to converse with him, get ready for worship. How's retirement life treating you? How's the family? It's chilling, you know how it is, just enjoying the family. I'm like, yeah, that's what's up. I know what's up, like I'm all chill. And then out of nowhere, Kevin Huang, our media guy, he comes to me, and he goes, hey, Pastor Howard, I brought a friend today. It's her first time at church. Her name's Michelle. I want to introduce you to her. And then I said, Kevin, does it look like I have the time for that right now? Kobe Bryant is here. Okay, you do what you need with this Michelle girl. And Kobe Bryant's here, man. Come on. And so I'm talking to Kobe Bryant, and we're having a good time. We're getting ready for worship. And then Kobe Bryant comes to me and he goes, hey, P-How. Kobe Bryant said, P-How. I'm thinking about becoming a member here, right? And I was like, and I'm kind of, be chill about it and be cool about it, and I'm like, okay, well, let me think about it. Yeah, you're in, just come on. You know what I'm saying? And he goes, hey, P-How, is it cool if I go up to the service and make an announcement of starting a basketball camp? I just want to let everyone know. Whatever you don't have to ask, whatever you want. Whatever, you want to preach today? Hey, man, it's on you. Go ahead. And Kevin, out of nowhere, Kevin comes to me and he goes, hey, man, media team is short. One guy, can I make an announcement? Kevin, does it look like I have the time to talk to you right now? Kobe Bryant is here. Okay, see, what's wrong with that picture? It's a silly illustration, but what's wrong with that picture? I don't know Kobe Bryant apart from Lakers and championship and his rings and phenomenal basketball shoes. Apart from that, I don't know his character. I don't know his faith. I really don't. I honestly don't know. I don't know if he has ever stepped into a church. I don't know if he's ever even read the Bible at all. I don't know anything about Kobe Bryant, and I am honoring him like he's the man. And then Kevin, one of our beloved members, who's doing an awesome job with media team, I'm just kind of like shabby clothing. And that's the kind of picture that James is talking about. It's a silly illustration, but that's what James is talking about. Who's Kobe Bryant? What's the language that James uses? Gold ring and fine clothing. And I'm picking on Kevin, but who's Kevin's shabby clothing? He dresses very nice, by the way, and I honor Kobe and I dishonor Kevin simply because of the way they look, because of what they represent, because of who they appear to be. Now, if we're going to be honest with that, is that really going to happen? No. Kobe Bryant's not ever going to, come here. Some famous, some millionaire, whatever, some guy is not going to come in here and everything's going to be subverted. That kind of thing is most likely not going to happen here. And so if we're going to be honest with this text, if we're going to really take what James says seriously when he says, don't show partiality, I think we have to dig a little bit, deconstruct a little bit and see how that kind of timeless commandment, that truth, creeps into where we are here today as live stream in 2017. Let me put it this way. I have a few friends who go to this particular church not too far from here. I won't say who, and I won't say which church it is, but I have a few friends who go there, and they're committed, and they're members. And I was having lunch with one of those friends not too long ago, and he's a type, he's just kind of very forward. We know each other really well, and so he doesn't really sugarcoat things, you know. And I like to warm up the conversations, but he just kind of goes at it. I see him, I say, what's up? And then we're eating lunch, and then the first thing he says is, he goes, hey, you dating anyone? You know, just straight to the cut, you know, just like doesn't waste time with anything. You dating anyone? You know, I'm just like, I saw you like a few days ago. Like, what could have happened in the past few days? No, I'm not dating anyone. And then he just goes off and he goes, man, come on, you're getting older. You got to find, you know, this, and in his words, you got to find your honey, man. You got to find your pastor's wife. You know, it's like, come on, get on it. You're a good guy. Get yourself out there. And a lot of the times I just go, you know, I just try to brush it off and move on to something else. But this time I just kind of squared him up and I said, you know what? I'm going to make him put his money where his mouth is. And I said, okay, fine. You set me up then. You say you know a lot of bachelorettes at your church. Introduce me then. Put your money where your mouth is. And then you know what he says? He says, sorry, I can't do that. You don't make enough money. And I was taken back. And it took me a couple seconds to actually realize what he said. He wasn't joking around. He wasn't being a jerk, but he was being real. And it all kind of it made sense to me because a lot of my friends who go to this particular church, they would share with me very honestly, I don't know if I can go to this church. I can't hang with them. I can't do life with them. I can't go out with them. It's just like money, money, money. Everything is like money driven to them. And so it kind of made sense to me. And my friend, he's just being real with me. And he's caring for me. And he's saying, if I were to set you up, it would be pointless because you don't fit the description. They want a quality of lifestyle that you can't produce for them. And so I had to respect that. And I'm not saying that church is a bad church. I'm not saying we're a better church. I'm not saying we're more spiritual, they're less spiritual. It's not that at all. I'm just saying every church is going to have their struggle. What's their gold ring? What's their fine clothing? It's money and it's lifestyle. And so especially if you are a covenant member here, you now have to ask that question about us. What is our gold ring? What is our fine clothing? What do we treat as the standard? What is our prejudice? What is our classism? What is our racism? What is our partiality that James is talking about? I don't think it's money so much. I don't think it's so much about ethnicity. I don't think it's so much about education, but I do think it has something to do with social status. Let's think about cliques. I know this sounds weird, but here's why cliques can be a good thing. You can be comfortable and you can be yourself. You're in that clique probably because you have a lot of things in common. For starters, it could be simply the fact that you're a guy and she's a girl, and that's what sets you off in your cliques. But beyond that, from there, maybe it's your liking to play sports. Maybe it's video games. Maybe it's anime. Maybe it's the fact that you have no real hobbies or interests, and so you're part of the clique that does nothing. Maybe. And then after some time, as you kind of build some trust, the beauty of that from hobbies and common interests is that you begin to build a trust, you begin to build a real relationship, and then you start to take Jesus in the picture, and then you do life, and then you do community, and you have this fellowship. And this person knows your story, and you know their story, and you can hold each other accountable and share life together. That's the beauty of cliques. You can pursue that very comfortably and very deeply. Here's how cliques can be a bad thing. In one word, it's this: exclusivity. I don't think you're aware of this, but I think some of you can have a tendency to be with someone or some people, and you're probably very unaware of this, but once you are physically with that person at church, you can create this invisible barrier where no one else is allowed in. I've seen it, and I know I can say that because that's happened to me. Someone can be bold enough to try to go into that barrier that you've created, and what you've done is unknowingly you have given them a certain look. You said a certain thing that said, you're not allowed in this barrier. This is between me and this person. And I need you to think about that. That's where cliques can be very dangerous in the church because you are unintentionally, maybe even intentionally, saying you are not welcome here. You need to go find something else. Why? Gold ring and fine clothing. You don't fit the description. Couples, you need to be really careful about this as well. Being in a relationship doesn't justify you to always have to be with your partner at church. There's nothing in the Bible that says that. There's nothing inherently wrong with you physically being with your partner, but you need to know that when you are physically with your partner at church, you need to know this, you are automatically sending a message to other people that you are not allowed in this. And what that says is no one is really allowed to be in that conversation with this partner, that even though you're in the context of community, you've created this barrier where other people are not allowed in. And so what you're basically doing is you've created your own community within a community, right? And no one is really going to say this to your face, but then it's like, why are you then at church? And some of you might even do that within small group. And I think this past trimester of summer community groups was kind of a trial thing, was kind of a testing period. And I hear good things, and it was co-ed, and you're doing a lot of activities together. And it was really great, and it was really fun. And I think it was inviting for a lot of people to come and see, what Livestream is about. Okay, but you may not know this, but you show up to your community groups, and you're hanging out with your boyfriend or girlfriend, and unknowingly what you're doing is you're within a group and you're saying, you're not allowed in this, even though I'm part of this group. And if you think I'm making that up, that's what I'm hearing. And that's what I'm seeing. And so, in my opinion, I think the whole point of small group and community group is actually to get away from your boyfriend or girlfriend, to be with people you trust, to be transparent, to expose your weaknesses. Why? So you can receive sharpening from your boys, from your girls, people you trust, guys who can square you up in the face and ask you some real questions so you can process, so you can think, so you can line yourself up with the gospel. So why? You can go back to your partner and be a better man and be a better woman. But then you show up to community groups only hanging out with your significant other for what? And now you've created exclusivity. And the danger in that is that because you've made this person your ultimate community at church, what you've unknowingly done is you've pushed other people away so that they're no longer people you trust, they're no longer real friends, now they're just acquaintances. And the reason that's a problem is because at your age, breaking up with your partner is very realistic. And so if that happens and you break up with your partner, who do you have left at church? And now you realize what you've done, and you're too prideful, you're too shameful to admit it, and so what do? You end up leaving church because you don't want to deal with it. What is community then? And I know I'm dangerously close to veering off to what James is talking about, but the idea is don't show partiality. There's nothing inherently wrong with cliques, nothing inherently wrong with having a boyfriend or girlfriend at church, but are you understanding community? Are you understanding togetherness? Are you understanding that it's not just don't show partiality, it's love all people. Show no partiality, love all people here. And I just have to say this, but if this entire message, you're like, yes, finally Pastor Howard is talking about people who are exclusive because I feel unaccepted. I feel like I'm excluded. I feel like I'm on the butt end of this and people are not including me. My challenge to you then would be, when was the last time you invited someone? When was the last time you initiated? When was the last time you welcomed someone? This is not to the elite of the church. This is to everybody. So in a very practical way, this is how we apply the gospel. And then James will move on to what the gospel is. Go to verse 5. Listen, my beloved brothers. Has not God chosen those who are poor in the world to be rich in faith and heirs of the kingdom, which he has promised to those who love him? But you have dishonored the poor man. Are not the rich the ones who oppress you and the ones who drag you into court? Are they not the ones who blaspheme the honorable name by which you were called? Stop there. There's this pretty interesting guy that I see on YouTube. His name is Eddie Wang. He's on Vice. And he's also created a TV show called Fresh Off the Boat. I don't know if you're familiar with him, but not everything on Vice is appropriate. I'm not propagating that you watch that, but there are some interesting things on Vice, on YouTube, that you can watch. And I was watching Eddie Wang because it's always somehow food related, but there was this really interesting episode where he has a sit-down dinner, just a one-on-one dinner with a white nationalist, and his name is Jared Taylor. You can Google him, you can look him up if you want. And they're just having a sit-down, just a dinner over Chinese food, and it was a really civil conversation that we're having. And so basically, Eddie Wang is sitting down with this guy, and they're not at each other's necks, they're not arguing, but they're having a very engaging, kind of intelligent conversation. And Eddie Wang is just kind of picking his brain on what his whole white nationalist movement and belief and convictions are. And so I'm hearing this guy out, and I know as soon as I mention white nationalist, right, like I said, that's like one of the ugliest things that you could be today. And so right off the bat, I know a lot of us, myself included, is like, oh, he's a white nationalist, he's racist, he's below me. We don't need people like him. And that's kind of the majority movement today. And so Eddie Wang is kind of sitting down and talking to him, and I'm hearing this guy out, and it's interesting, okay? This is what he was saying, in my opinion, what he's saying. Why is it so wrong for me to want white people to be the majority in this country? He says, Japanese people are the majority in Japan, Mexican people are the majority in Mexico. Why is it so wrong for me to want my people to be the majority in this country? Because he believes that white people are slowly becoming the minority in this country. And basically, the whole white national movement is a movement that's trying to protect that. Why is it so wrong for me to want my people, white people, to be the majority in this country? And so Eddie then would bring up history, and he would bring up the fact, well, I mean, they're not, my assumption is they're not Christian, and so Eddie would bring up the fact, well, don't you believe that we're all from the same race? Don't you believe that if you believe in evolution, that's my assumption, don't you believe that we're all from the continent or the country of Africa? And if so, then race doesn't matter, does it? We're all from the same place. Race does not matter. You are setting up these fake hierarchies for no reason. And basically, Jared Taylor's response is, so what? So what? Whether you're right or wrong, so what? And Eddie's like, what do you mean, so what? I mean, don't you care about history? Don't you care about where he comes from? And he says, no, I don't care. So what? Do you know why? And so Jared Taylor says, the reason why is because that was the past. That has nothing to do with today. And Eddie's whole thing is, well, that's where we come from. You don't care about that? He says, no, I care about today. Do you know why I care about today? Because I'm alive today. Because I'm alive today, I care about what happens to my people today. Who cares what happened in the past? In other words, what Jared Taylor is pushing for is survival of the fittest. Do you see that? Survival of the fittest. I'm going to do what I need to do to one-up on everyone else. Morality doesn't matter. Race does not matter. I don't care if it's wrong for you, if it's wrong or right to kick people out of the country. It's what I want from my people, so I'm going to pursue that. Now, hear me, I'm not coming out as racist, and I'm not in any way supporting Jared Taylor or the white national movement, but in his own logic, in my opinion, he makes sense. In his own system of thinking and logic, he makes sense, because his entire system of logic, if I'm understanding him correctly, is that it is about survival of the fittest. If you believe in survival of the fittest, racism makes sense. If you believe in survival of the fittest, prejudice makes sense, classism makes sense, partiality in any way makes sense. You have to do whatever you can do to one-up the next person or the next group. Morality doesn't matter. But now listen to me. The church does not function in the same way as the world. Amen? The church functions from a radically different set of values, not survival of the fittest, but the gospel. The world says it's about survival of the fittest. James says it's the poor in the world who will be rich in faith. He's preaching gospel at you, church. He's talking about not the financially poor, but the spiritually poor, the spiritually bankrupt. He's reverberating and echoing Jesus when he says in Matthew 5:3, blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. It's not about financially poor. It's not about poor clothing or any of that. It's about being spiritually bankrupt because you are so poor that you have no one else but to desperately trust in it but God alone. Here's the big question. Why should we not show partiality? Because if God showed partiality to us based on our righteousness, we'd all be doomed. Because there isn't a single one of us who can go to God with the gold ring and fine clothing. All we are in front of God is ragged clothes, poor, dirty, ugly, unlovable. I mean, can you honestly tell me that amongst the millions and millions of people and sinners in this world, you can actually go to God and say, God, I think I should stick out. I think you should save me and not other people. And God looks at you and says, why should I save you? Because you're on praise team? Because you're a small group leader? If God chose people based on anything else but sheer grace, even the most righteous person you know is condemned to hell. This is why we need the gospel. Go to verse 8. James writes, if you really fulfill the royal law according to the scripture, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. You are doing well. But if you show partiality, you are committing sin and are convicted by the law as transgressors. For whoever keeps the whole law but fails in one point has become guilty of all of it. For he who said, do not commit adultery, also said, do not murder. If you do not commit adultery but do murder, you have become a transgressor of the law. So speak and so act as those who are to be judged under the law of liberty. For judgment is without mercy to one who has shown no mercy. Mercy triumphs over judgment. So here's James's point. If you break one law, you break all of them. The law that covers all other laws is to love God with your heart, soul, and mind. And if you love God with everything you had, you love God with absolutely everything you have, everything that you have, your emotions, your intellect, your body, everything that you have, what inevitably will happen then is you will love others. And that goes back to this idea where if you are in this solid vertical relationship, then your horizontal relationships will make a lot more sense. Why? Because God is love. I want you to hear how profound that statement is. If God is love, then anything that's not God is not love. If God is love, He is exclusively love. And so if you try to love other people apart from the love of God, it is not real love. And so when you are learning God's love and you are being transformed by God's love and you are studying God's love and you are applying God's love, you are saturated in this vertical relationship of God's love, then from there and from only then, you can then love others. Does that make sense to you? I really need you to understand that. That is the Bible. And so then if you are loving out of God's love, out of a genuine overflow of God's love for you, then what that challenges us to do then is you cannot choose who you love, but you love all people. Because that is who God is. If you are loving out of God's love, then you have to love all people because that's who God is. And so it's natural for us to gravitate towards other people who somehow benefit us. That's what we're taught. That's how we're raised. That's in the educational system. I scratch your back only if you scratch my back. And so then why do we need the gospel then? It's to show us how deeply flawed and messed up we are and how we view love. And I know that sounds so not positive, right? It's just one thing after another and telling us how we're jacked up, how we can't love. I can't love apart from God's love and all these things. Okay, but listen to me. Something that may seem like that's not uplifting as the gospel is the most uplifting thing. The gospel doesn't just tell us that we're messed up, and then it just leave us there. But the gospel shows us how utterly desperate we are, so that we have no other choice but to say, okay, Jesus, if there's nothing that I can do, I have no other choice but to leave it on you. You see, when you surrender your inability to love others on Jesus, that is absolutely liberating. Can you imagine if your righteousness and your ability to love, and that was what was dependent on you being saved, on God loving you, I mean, that is destruction, that is despair. But when you say, I'm going to look at the cross of Jesus Christ, loving all people based on none of our righteousness, and he loved all people, then it's on Jesus, isn't it? Listen to me, depending on God sounds hard, but it is the most liberating thing you can do. If your righteousness is dependent on you and not Jesus, you will become exhausted, you will burn out, you will get cynical. Loving people will be the last thing you want to do. But if it's on Jesus, then there's this deep rest and enjoyment that you can have because you know that Jesus is steering your life. Church, if we have been saved by the gospel and we say that we believe in the gospel, church cannot be a place of social hierarchy. Church needs to be a central meeting place where sinners, selfish people, lustful people, angry people, apathetic people, prideful people come and find grace at the cross of Jesus Christ. That is not my job. That is our job. Show no partiality. Why? Because the gospel does something to us. I'm going to close there. Right now, we're going to go into a time of communion. And if we have been saved by the grace of Jesus Christ, this is a time for you. This is a time set apart for saved and baptized believers. And this time around, it's going to be a little bit different. The elders will come to you and they will provide for you the wine and the juice. And our intention is to provide this for baptized believers again. And so if you are not a baptized believer, we invite you to joyfully observe and to see what it is that we're doing as covenant members. Communion is a sacrament instituted by Jesus, and it's a visible way to be unified with him in his death and resurrection. And covenant members, as we participate in this, I encourage you to participate joyfully and prayerfully, to not make this a routine, but to make this very meaningful. And so Pastor Moon will lead us in the communion, and so I invite you to participate with him.